How you doing, everyone? Welcome to another amazing episode of Coffee with Colin. My name is Colin Egglesfield, and this is the show that I started a few years ago, and this is the last episode of season 6. I can't believe we are already at the end of season 6. We've been going now for quite a bit, and it's been amazing to just be able to bring some incredible guests to the show to share their insight, their wisdom, their contribution to making the world a better place. And that is exactly what I am committed to doing. I just love to do this show because I love to just have incredible conversations, to learn, to grow, to scale. I feel like, through my interactions with working with some incredible people, not only in my acting career, but also outside in my entrepreneurial endeavors, I've met some incredible people that have helped me get to where I want to go. And much like any professional vocation out there, if you really want to level up and continue to grow and get better, it requires us to surround ourselves with amazing people who may know something that we don't. And I think it's the highest form of emotional intelligence if you can be humble enough to know when you don't know something. And what I love to do is invite people onto this show to just share their wisdom, their insight, to help us grow and to level up in life. And as a life coach myself, my guest that I'm going to be having on tonight, this guy's been doing this for quite some time. He's got a very inspirational story that I'm looking forward to him sharing this with you. And much like a lot of us out there, where we've had some pretty emotional or traumatic instances in our life that have really defined who we are. And for me, it's been my cancer battle, and something that I know a lot of people are dealing with. And for everyone out there who's dealing with any health issues or whatever, just want to let you know again that you are not alone, that you have the ability to connect with an amazing group of people with my Patreon community. So if anyone is out there and is looking for more community and a place to connect with a great group of people who are incredibly supportive and just offer an immense amount of love and support with whatever it is that you're dealing with, by all means, would love for you to join my Patreon community. But for those of us who have had these life-defining moments, what I like to look at these kinds of moments as the opportunity to decide who we want to be in the face of all of this. And my guest tonight, he's really taken what he had happen to him when he was 7 years old. It was a traumatic incident where he was actually run over by a truck and almost lost his arm. And after quite a few surgeries, I believe 24 to be exact, he's really taken his experience and redefined his life in terms of what it means to be able to be out there and support other people that may be going through any sort of issues or things that they need to be contending with in life. And much like everyone else out there, the world is a freaking crazy place. There is so much going on in this world. And, with everything from the election to AI, there's just a lot of craziness and uncertainty going on in the world. And what I like to do with this show is just bring a sense of community and a sense of connection, so that no matter who you are or wherever you are at, that you may have an ability to connect with myself or any one of my guests that may come on the show, including my guest tonight. Before I get to that, I just want to say thank you to our sponsors throughout the past season here. Sang Coffee in particular, you guys make amazing coffee. And if you haven't seen my episode of Coffee with Colin with the founder of Sang Coffee, I would definitely advise you to check that out. And just want to say thank you to Sang Coffee. And then also just for all of you out there who have been supporting the show over the past few years, really appreciate it. We're going to be making some changes over here at Coffee with Colin. We are going to be redefining and going into a direction where I think as we go through life, we get feedback. And as we get the feedback, we want to really start to hone in. What I've realized is that if we are spreading ourselves too thin, we can become really good at a lot of things, but not great at one or two things. And so what my goal is in the next near future here is to really zero in and hone in on what I do best and what I'd love to support everyone out there with in terms of the area of overcoming your fear of public speaking and learning really how to communicate better And with my guest tonight, I'd really like to get his opinion and his input on what it means to be a master communicator and really to be able to take your communication game to the next level. He's a speaker, he is a coach, and he runs a mastermind. He runs all kinds of different things. He also does retreats here in the Phoenix area because he lives right here in my backyard as well. So we're going to be talking to him tonight about everything communication. And at the end of the show, I'm going to be talking about the launch of a new course that I have coming up called Beyond Impact. And it is a course geared towards introverts. So all of you introverts out there who get terrified of getting up in front of audiences, this is the course for you. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that again towards the end of the show. But before I just bring my guest on, I just want to say again, thank you for everyone who's tuned in religiously over the past few years. Appreciate you. And as always, you can type in whatever questions you may have for myself or my guest tonight in the chat here. And whether you're tuning in from YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, appreciate you guys being here. And I'm sure you guys are going to have some great questions. Please utilize him for his knowledge base. I've listened to him before. I've listened to his podcast. He's incredibly wise. He's got something really cool where he invites you to just take out the garbage. Take out the garbage out of your head and just take out the garbage with whatever it is that you are dealing with in life. So he's going to tell us more about that. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Mr. Brian Bogert. Yeah, welcome, Brian.
What's up, man? I told you I saved this little bit of leftover coffee for 5 p.m. to rock and roll with you, brother. But I got to say, listening to your intro and just all the things that you talk about to your community, we had a very brief interaction kind of pre-show, but the alignment is really deep. Man, I think in almost every topic that you hit on, I was like, yep, okay, I want to jump. Yep, okay, I want to jump in. We aren't even on yet, right? And so I'm really looking forward to the conversation today. And I have to just acknowledge and thank Will Wagner, our mutual friend, who I know brought us together because, connections don't happen unless people connect us sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you, Will Wagner. And so here you are. And you, like I said, you're just right in my backyard, just down the street here in Phoenix. You're born and bred here. And it sounds like from a very early age, there was this incident that really defined your life and who you are. Can you tell us a little bit about what really happened on that fateful day when you were 7 years old?
Yeah.
When you had this this run-in with this truck? Tell us about this.
Yeah. So August 10th, 1992. So literally 32 years and 9 days ago, we just passed the anniversary. It was 6:10 p.m. It was about a 115-degree day in the middle of August. And my mom, my brother, and I went to our local Walmart just to get a 1-inch paintbrush. And we get back to the car, we breeze through it. And anyone who's known me for more than about 2 seconds knows I walk fast, I talk fast. I've always had this vigor for life. So it doesn't surprise anybody to know I was the first one in the car. Man, I wanted to get home and put that paintbrush to use, right? But this was back in the days before there was key fobs. So I had to wait for my mom to literally reach her hand in the purse, grab the key, stick it out, stick it in the door, turn it before we could go on over the way. And as I'm waiting in that amount of time, there's a truck that pulls up in front of the store and the driver and the middle passenger park and get out. Passenger all the way to the right felt the truck moving backwards. So Colin, he did what any one of us would do and scooted over to put his foot on the brake. But the combination of shock and force and the rush in doing so, he slammed that foot down so hard, he missed the brake and hit the gas. It threw him up on the steering wheel, up on the dashboard, and before you know it, he's catapulting across the parking lot 40 miles an hour right at me without any time to react. We were in an end spot. So he goes up and over the median, clears the tree in the median, hits our car, knocks me over. We think that I was holding onto the handle, and it yanked me to the ground. Truck continued on to run over me diagonally, tearing my spleen and leaving a tire track scar on my stomach, and continuing on to sever my left arm completely from my body.
Wow.
The next thing my mom hears is my brother's voice that says, "Mom, Brian's arm is over there." And as she gazes up to see where he's pointing, she sees a string of muscle cooking on the asphalt, just like hamburger. Now, what I do have to say, and I have to acknowledge, there's two things that I always have to say on the tail end of this. One, I always acknowledge the woman other than my mom that's responsible for me being here today. I've said for years that I was forever indebted to her because of her choice to go into action. On the 30th anniversary, I met her, and that was confirmed because she did go into action, and she had someone with her that could have as well who didn't. No malintent, no resentment towards that person, well within their right. Why do I highlight this? Because a singular moment and a singular action can have a ripple effect to impact hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives, and we won't even know it, right? But showing up for others in a moment of trauma truly can not only impact yourself, but change the trajectory for that many lives. And that's what this woman did. The second thing that I always say is look, man, I realize how unique my story is. But similar to you in terms of helping people communicate their own stories and be able to understand the power in those messages, the more I've told my own, the more I realize how unique each and every one of your stories are who's listening tonight. So what's important is that we learn to pause long enough to extract the lessons we can from our stories so we become intentional in how we apply them in our lives moving forward. We all have the ability to do that, and we all have the ability to tap into the collective wisdom of other people's stories to shorten our own curve to learning. So I'm sure we're going to go a lot deeper in different directions, but that's what happened on that fateful day. And, 32 years later, I'm here, happy, healthy, productive, and I consider myself one of the lucky ones.
Well, thank goodness for the guardian angels who were there on that day. And from that day, as you were growing up, obviously life coaching really wasn't a thing when we were growing up. What did you want to do when you were a kid and when you started to go, school, college?
Yeah. Yeah. So I knew I always had a skill set with people. And from an early age, I started my first business when I was 12. So I always believed that business and people were going to be something, but I didn't know what that looked like or what I was going to do. I just, in my early days, thought I was going to make a shitload of money and take over the world, not knowing really what that meant. And that often was what set me in my tracks. You're right. Life coaching isn't it, but it's also not where I started. Speaking isn't where I started, though I've been on stages since I was age 7. I, in my professional career, built and scaled a risk management employee benefits consulting firm to over 16 million within the span of a decade. But it's also a part of the broader story. See, and where I start with this is that oftentimes I used to think that this was my transformation story, that this was the story that was my origin story. It was going to be everything. And though there's truth to that, there's also a lot of reality that I didn't learn until much later, that this was also the story that created a ton of trash from my past that I really did push through and push down for years, that I switched into a mindset of mental toughness to overcome and perform at a very high level. But I also learned to receive love, validation, and connection through performance, which perpetuated this underlying element of shame that bubbled up as anger that almost cost me everything and everyone I ever cared about. Right. So I know we'll slow down and unpack pieces of this, but again, I didn't know what I wanted to be. In fact, I knew what I wanted, which was to fill my bank account. I did that, but by age 27, it was full and I was empty. So it really started a whole lot of things in my life that I had to change the trajectory for.
So at 27, what did you decide to do then?
So 27 was 7 years after I rebroke my left arm and almost lost it again. And that window of time, I realized how much I became isolated because of the power of my own narrative, which was Brian's good, Brian's strong, Brian's capable, Brian can do anything himself. Mm-hmm. So that window of time from 20 to 27 was focused on what I believed were vulnerability and authenticity. The glue that I used to believe bound human connection. And though they're important ingredients, there's a very major missing one. But by 27, I didn't really have a model for what I wanted. I was trying to find who I was. But what I had was a model for chasing what? What house, what car, what amount of money? So at 27, literally, our business was about $10 million at the time. I had the house, I had the car, I had the money, I had the kids on the way. But when I realized that it cost me who I was, and I was just as empty inside as I was 7 years earlier, it showed me that whatever path I took for human connection wasn't there. And the subconscious that I now understand, my unconscious mind, was doing two things. One, I believed that if I could build a life of significance, a life of prominence, right? Well-respected in the community, all the philanthropic work that I did, all the money I raised, this successful business, maybe people would just want to be around me, right? That wasn't what I was attempting to accomplish, but that was the unconscious mind. And then the other side of it was, yeah, I leaned into vulnerability. I leaned into authenticity. They served me really well, but they also didn't. Because what happened is I got really good at sharing just enough about myself, asking just enough questions to get someone else to lower their armor, and then I'd drive a Mack truck through and continue focusing on their problems instead of my own. So at 27, the shift was I started to realize how much I was dealing with shame, how much it was impacting my business, how much it was impacting my relationships, how much it was impacting my health. I didn't even realize that shame existed in my life because it wasn't the predominant narrative. But I had to start unpacking that. I hired my first coach. I started going to different levels of therapy. My wife and I started going to marriage counseling not that long after, a few years after we were also in the process of getting our kids diagnosed with some neurodiversities. But it just was the opening. It was the opening to start asking myself different questions. It was the opening to start looking in a more aware and more intentional way to who I was and who I wanted to continue to become. And the path that I was on, though my bank account was full and I thought I had everything I ever wanted, I was nowhere near close because I was empty and I wasn't experiencing joy, freedom, and fulfillment.
I think a lot of us walk around carrying some degree of shame in our life. What would you say is the working definition of shame that you would use,
Oh man. So
and how it relates to you and your experience?
yeah, the way I discuss shame, I talk about shame like it's the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing because it presents itself as about 50 other emotions and it hides and masks itself behind a lot of others.
Yep.
The two traditional talk tracks, and I have to credit Brene Brown for helping me identify this at 27 and reading some of her material, is that there's really two tracks. It's the first one is I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, right? Which can happen in so many different ways. And I think the broader element to your question is also how does this develop in the world and how do we start to escape it, right? But if I'm not worthy and I'm not good enough is the predominant narrative, that's also why I didn't realize I had shame. Because though I had moments there, that wasn't my predominant narrative. The other side of shame is when you show up, you shut all down the worth and other issues and you show up in the arena and you're ready to go to battle. It's who do you think you are? See, the bigger I lived, the more I felt the need to apologize for everything I was doing. The more I felt the need to pull the throttle back in my life. Because if I lived bigger, then it must be making everyone else in my life feel small. Well, there was embedded elements that helped me believe that, but that's not really true. I had to be able to escape that. Right. And so for me, what was shame showing up as? Shame was showing up as scarcity. It was showing up as control. It was showing up as perfectionism. It was showing up as guilt. It was showing up as defense. It was showing up as anger. It was showing up as never being able to fully step into and own my own power and potential, even if I knew it to be true. It was a constant filter that disconnected me from everything and everyone. And here's the thing, should in and of itself is a shame-based word because it implies whoever you are and whatever you're doing, you're not good enough. But that's where a lot of shame comes from is those early narratives. Because guess what? We're born as our brightest, most authentic light will ever be. Anybody who has kids knows this. Curiosity and wonder just flows through us. And then what happens? Parents, teachers, coaches, employers start saying, you should do this. You shouldn't do that. You should want this. You shouldn't want that. You should live here. You shouldn't live here. You should date this person. You shouldn't date this person. You should drive this. It's telling us all these things that start funneling us into this box based on who the world has told us who to be instead of who we really are. Why do you think so many adults don't even have a clue what they're living for or whose standards they are or what their purpose or vision is? Because they've never actually even given themselves the permission to explore it because of whatever existed. So shame to me is the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing. And it is to me the dominant energy and emotion that actually creates division both within ourselves and within each other, right? Because it keeps us separate. And shame is just ultimately damaging because most people don't know what it looks like. They don't know how it shows up in their body. They don't know how it shows up in their world. And so they don't even have a clue on what to do or how to escape it. But the other piece that I'll highlight, because it's important around shame. Do you know David Hawkins and his scale of frequency?
I don't.
So David Hawkins mapped out what he calls the human frequency scale. And it's technically a 0 to 1,000 scale, but he mapped it from 0 to 700. Shame is the lowest registerable frequency on the scale. It sits at 20. Courage is at 400. Self-actualization is at 700. 90% of the world are stuck between anger and fear, which is 100 to 150, right? Most of the time, anger is not a primary emotion. It's secondary to shame. But most people don't know that, right? Because they don't understand the dynamics that go into it. And so if we look at this and realize the second we wake up in the morning and we say, we should have gotten up earlier, we should have eaten better yesterday, we should have worked out, we should have, the second we put ourselves into that should language, we drop ourselves into the shame frequency. Guess what? The second shame enters, opportunity and growth go out the window. There's no chance that they can coexist.
So where did your shame come from then? Was it the accident? Was it shame?
So there was a lot. There was a lot. There was a lot. Now there's layers. Okay. So I'll give you some of the predominant ones. When I came out of the hospital, I had a teddy bear in between my arm. Okay. And the teddy bear between my arm was because my arm needed to be at 90 degrees. So I was cute, I was loud, and everybody always would come up because they were just expecting me to give the normal childhood injury story. They'd ask me what happened and wanted me to believe that, or wanted me to say something like, well, I was racing my brother down our streets on our bike, or I flew off the jungle gym. But what would I do? I'd look them deadpan in the eye and say, I was run over by a truck and my left arm was torn off. Now, 99% of people did the following two things. They would pause and they'd turn to my parents for validation, which told me what? They didn't believe me. They didn't see me. They didn't understand me. They weren't willing to accept the truth that I'm living and embodying at the moment because it's too audacious of a story. But what does that start to do? It embeds this belief that even if I'm telling my truth, nobody's going to believe it anyway, right? And then those same people would do the following things. They would view me through their lens of what they'd be capable of in my situation, immediately telling me all the things I was and wasn't going to be able to do in my life. At 7, I remember distinctly receiving both of those energies and not feeling safe, not feeling protected, not feeling seen and understood, and certainly not feeling connected to myself or anyone outside of me. And so if we really start to look at the underpinnings of shame, it's an element of self-protection. So let's understand this, because this is really important and it'll weave through every other part of our conversation. I believe in the human experience, we all seek and desire 4 things, Colin. We all want to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to feel protected, and those are not the same thing. We all want to feel seen and understood, and we all want to feel connected. These last 2 are the 2 that we want most, but they don't happen unless the first 2 do. So what happens when we walk into an environment, we don't feel connected, we don't feel seen and understood, and we don't feel safe or protected? We protect ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know those 35-gallon black trash bags? Unfold one flat, and I want you to imagine grabbing onto one corner of each of the bag and lift it up in front of you and hold it. This is your armor, okay? It's what you're protecting yourself with. So Colin, then I'll ask you this, right? So how could you ever expect anybody in your life that you care about, your loved ones, your family, your friends, your clients, the people that you want to help, those that you want to impact, how could you properly expect any of them to see who you are, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, your heart, your intent, your soul, your desire, your value, your boundaries, delivered through this opaque force field?
Yeah.
And that's assuming that they're not carrying their own that's going to further dilute the message.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that most people don't understand is that the second we protect ourselves, we actually guarantee we're going to disconnect ourselves from the 2 things we want most, which is to be seen and understood and to be connected. But we also simultaneously, the second we protect ourselves, guarantee we will disconnect ourselves from who we are and what we want in this world. And so the shame was me always having to justify, protect, and defend my own narrative, my own ability, my own story, my own truth, right? I also grew up in a household where there was one right way to do everything, and I didn't always know what that right way was, which also meant that I often was feeling like whatever I did, it was wrong, right? And so you combine patterns of these, and there's a lot more things that I've unpacked with specificity to know the sources, because I'm a big believer in we have to get to the source or sources. But those are just a couple of examples and these dynamics that create shame in everybody's worlds that they often are unconscious to.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good analogy to think about where in our lives do we walk around with holding these garbage bags out in front of ourselves to protect ourselves from other people. And one of the things that really helped me realize that I was, I guess, holding up this proverbial garbage bag was when I was in this acting class that I found myself in I was 25 years old. And what's great about an acting class is that you just can't hide. There's no place to hide. There's when you get up in front of the class and you've got to just essentially bare your soul and really reveal your feelings and your emotions to be able to fully inhabit these characters. And it was interesting to see just how difficult it was for some people to actually start to let their guard down or let this garbage bag down. But what I realized that after there was this, some of my acting teachers were really skilled at making us feel safe enough to let these, or actually it was more of shining a light on the inauthentic beliefs about who we were. And so I think a lot of people hold up these garbage bags and they're not even the real versions of ourselves. And, you talk a lot about authenticity, and I think it's really interesting, what you talked about, and forgive me, because you do speak very quickly.
I talk fast. I know. It's okay.
Very quickly, but I do, what I talk about in my book is obviously, Maslow's scale hierarchy
of needs,
and the need for feeling safe and feeling protected. That's interesting that you mentioned that feeling safe and feeling protected, they're 2 different things. And that's interesting you said that. Can you expound on that and tell us a little bit more about what that means?
Absolutely. So I think that safety can be accomplished by ourselves or by others. Protection is not typically something that happens within ourselves. And when we do, that's when we disconnect. So what do I mean by that? My wife is a vicious protector for me, right? Like, she is somebody that will fight for me. She will fight to the death for me. She wants more for me than she wants from me. She cares so much about me that she caters to it, right? Being protected doesn't have to be a spouse. In fact, we teach this concept of becoming a protector and a connector in each space. because we all have the ability to do it. I believe we all have the chance to be the thermostat, not the thermometer. And so when we walk into a room where we don't feel safe, we don't feel seen and understood, we don't feel connected, we aren't in that place where we feel protected, right? We have two ways that we can lower our own armor to become the protector and the connector. We can fabricate it in a moment by convincing ourselves that we're safe, right? Or we can actually do the work over time to unpack the things that are causing that layer of protection in the first place, actually heal through it. And then, oh, by the way, we don't actually get triggered by those same things 99% of the time anymore. And when we do, we spend minutes and moments in it, not weeks or months like we have in other periods, right? So there's so much more time, energy, and capacity. But to become a protector and a connector, it requires what I call a strong spine and a soft front. A strong spine is I've done the work to know who I am, what I'm willing to do, what I'm not willing to do, my value, my intent, my soul, my heart, my desire, my boundaries, which means it's kind of like Eminem at the end of the movie 8 Mile. When he rattles off all this stuff that his competitor's about to rattle with him, he's like, what do you got on me now, bro? Right? Like at the end of the day, if we don't have anything to justify, defend, or protect, there's no need for armor in the first place. So if we are centered and clear enough in who we are, that's that strong spine that's unwavering in any environment. But then I think about my wife and my kids in this next piece. The soft front, I like to think about if my wife and my kids want to come to me, they want to come to me for love. They want to come to me for leadership. They want to feel light. They want to be consoled, right? Or they just want to feel safe by being protected in dad's arms. Do they want to lay their head down on a metal chest piece of armor? No. They want my gentle intensity and strength that's coming from my heart, not from my head. They don't want it to be my physical strength that's keeping them safe. It's the energy and how I make them feel. Right. And so to become someone who's a protector and connector, again, we can fabricate it in a moment by convincing ourselves that we're safe. But what I'm trying to suggest is just like what you're talking about, those beautiful instructors that can create that environment for acting classes to feel safe and protected, right? So that they can truly open up and know that they're not going to be judged or criticized by being seen and understood and showing the full nature of who they are. We all have that ability in our families, in our businesses, in our communities. But again, it's often this armor that also disconnects us from the reality of what's actually happening. And so protector, right, to feel protected is an external thing, but that also requires you to allow it, right? My wife can't protect me and be my protector if I have my own armor up. My wife cannot actually see all the areas of vulnerability that she needs to step up in my own blind spots if I don't allow her to do so. Right? How often do we block even people's ability to give to us and our own ability to receive through our own armor because we're like, no, I got it. I'm tough. I can handle this. Right? We don't even accept the help, but yet we can be cared for at such a deep level that if we really pay attention to it, the only way to get real intimacy, real connection, real love with anybody we care about is to actually operate without armor. Right?
Yeah. So often when people give us compliments, how often do we just swat it away? Like, dude, you're great, you're amazing, you're incredible. Like, no, it was nothing. It was nothing. We literally are pushing away the energy of the gratitude. And this is what we need, this energy. I mean, from doing some of this work myself and just venturing into the world of just with acting, a lot of what we learn as actors is our communication is really, it's an energy exchange. And
huge.
The important thing, and especially you learn this in improv classes, it's all about keeping that energy flow going. And so in improv class, there is no. It is yes and. And so when someone gives you something, it's yes and then you can transform it to whatever it is you want. What that does.
So this is something that I struggled with for years, Colin. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I have to say this because it's so powerful and relevant to what you said. For years, I deferred all compliments. 2 years ago, I started literally forcing myself to listen and say the following thing because it forced the energy and it also gave confirmation. I would look and I would just say, thank you very much. I fully received that.
Boom.
Because it closes the loop. And you know the number of people that get stuck in their tracks when they're like, whoa, you fully received that? Then it opens up a door to actually lead to this whole conversation in any other situation. But you're spot on, bro.
Yeah.
We have to. We have to receive it.
And then it allows the other person to have a full experience of who they are as someone who was giving something of like a gift or it's the support. So it allows them to be seen and heard for what they're doing. And so that's why it's so important to just stop. And like you said from the very beginning, just to pause and to be able to just really take a closer look at, how we do operate in life. And so with that being said, you know, someone who's done a lot of internal work, you know, I'm just kind of curious about self-identity and what your thoughts are about self-identity in terms of, you know, a lot of what we do in acting class and in as work as an actor, from when I was doing my training, was we construct these characters that are written down on a page, and we essentially start pulling in the value systems and the characteristics and the essence of who this character is. So I was starting to build these characters and these self-identities of these characters going into these auditions, and slowly starting to book these TV shows and these roles. And I felt more confident playing these roles than I was playing myself in my own life. And so it really was an amazing experiment in terms of really then starting to turn that analysis inward and starting to do some of this character analysis work that we were doing in acting class on myself. And I was like, I didn't even realize, like, the ideas of who I was I was operating based on what I was told I was, and based on where I was raised and what I grew up, you know, being told to believe, instead of really choosing and intentionally being what I chose my self-identity to be. And this is where I felt like once I started to do this, I started to be able to show up more confidently in my life, knowing that the answer that I was giving and how I was showing up was chosen by me. And there's some wobbliness in there too, because a lot of people like to pass off responsibility about their decisions based on, like, well, it's not me, it's in the Bible, or it's not me, it's what we do at work, or this is how we've done it for the past like 30 years. And so there's a lot less culpability when you are pushing off that responsibility. But then what that does is it denies you the ability to show up as a fully formed, intentional human being. And this is where it gets really rough. And this is where I've discovered I've needed a lot of coaches and acting teachers and other people who are at that level to say, you got this. And don't let the insecurities about who you are, what other people are telling you that you can or can't be. And this is where I started to venture into the personal coaching world, because I discovered that if I was going to really truly commit to being my authentic self, I was going to need some support doing this, because it is sometimes very scary and very lonely work. But at the other side of it is this revelation of just like freedom and this sense of like, you know what, I've earned this and that I deserve to be here. And I can confidently look at anyone in the eye now and say that I've done the work to be able to know that I deserve to stand here, be here. It's helped my auditioning, it's helped my work, it's helped my entrepreneurship. And it's really been a blessing for me. So with that being said, what is your definition of self-identity, and who would you say you are at a deep level?
I like that question. I agree with a lot of what you just said. Right. I think that there's some different areas where we can kind of extrapolate a little bit further, but I would suggest that like that is also the beginning process of exploration and awareness for everybody, is asking those questions on who am I? What is my purpose? What are my values? What's the impression and legacy that I want to leave? Like, and not just from a pure like planning abstract standpoint, but like actually answering that question, because most of the work that I do with people is helping them get back to who they already are before the world told them who to be.
Yeah.
Right. And myself included in the same dynamic. But do you know how many times you'll ask questions to people about who they are, what's important to them, or frankly, asking them to list out their values, and they'll list their values. And then you ask them to show you where they spend their time, focus, energy, and money. And there's a complete lack of alignment. Right.
Yeah.
So how do I define self-identity? Often it is who you were before the world told you who to be. But what that also means is, to me, I didn't even know who that was. I had to find who that was. I had pieces that were resonant and were remembering things for me, but so much of my life was under this guise of also becoming a patient for a long time, right? In some of my most developmental years, right? There was so many pieces that like my identity was lost, or because I grew up in a house where there was one right way to do everything, or I was so misunderstood that I never actually allowed myself to give myself permission to explore in those elements of who I am. And so this I find to be very, very common for people. Now, the definition of self-identity I find very interesting, because I think it really is about getting back to the core of who somebody already is, as well as who they're becoming internally first, right? How many people live based on their parents' standards, their parents' visions, their parents' narratives based on who they need to be? Again, and this leads to all this destruction and people not having happy lives. And so for me, that's really been what the discovery has been since age 27. The last 12 to 13 years has been getting really clear on those answers, right? And so it shows up in different ways. What was the second part of the question? You said two things. What's self-identity? And then I forgot the second part. I apologize.
And who would you say you are on a deep level?
Okay. I'm going to come back to that.
The authentic Brian, before Brian was named Brian, before you were raised in Phoenix, before the truck accident, and before any of the things that have told you who you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to give one analogy first, because I think it's important, and it's an anecdote that also was a big shift in me discovering my identity. Okay. And this happened in the last 3 to 4 years. But where am I going is that there would be situations in my house, and I'll make sure that you understand this is very, very clear. It is pragmatic and it answers this question. But often in my house, right, being a husband and a father has always been a big part of my identity. And I say that loudly and proudly. However, my actions were not always congruent. Okay. And so what do I mean by that? My wife would come and she'd say something as simple as this: "Hey, honey, what do you want to do with the kids this weekend?" But my shame and my anger filter, again, that armor, would cause me to hear it this way: "Hey, honey, you've not done enough to be a good husband and father here recently. So what are you going to do to make up for it this weekend?" To which point I would feel that gut visceral reaction. Like, what am I being challenged here? Right. And like, instead of listening and answering the question, what do? I rattle off the 10 things I've done in the last few days to show her I'm a good husband and father. Right. So some real quick barometers for people to understand whether or not who they believe they are is actually what's being received in the world is this gap between intent and actions, right? I often tell people that the trash from your past is not your fault. It just becomes your responsibility once you become aware of it, or you start burying others in yours. But what happened in that scenario? I reacted. I created further damage, which took more energy, more time, more focus on both parts to diffuse and neutralize that energy and regain trust, because I snapped and threw toxic masculinity in front of her when it wasn't even intended that way. Right? I thought I was just answering the question that she asked me, which wasn't what she said. Okay. And so why I'm highlighting this is how often do leaders, right? Leaders in a home, leader in a business, feel like their intent is not being received. Oh, my people just don't understand. Oh, my wife just doesn't get it. My husband just doesn't get it. My kids will never understand. But here's the reality. If you don't believe that you're being received based on your intent, analyze your actions. If you don't believe that you're getting the answers and the outcomes that you want in your life, analyze your questions to yourself first. What are you asking of yourself, and what are you doing to explore it? Now, to come full circle to that, why I'm saying this is I believed I was living congruent to who I thought I was for a lot of years, but it was coming out in moments like that through my armor. So who am I before all this stuff happened? I think I'm deeply curious. I'm fascinated in the human experience. I love deeply, and I care for and protect others viciously, right? I am somebody who loves the contrast that exists in life, loves laughing, loves exploration and experience, and loves to challenge and push myself to become what's possible. And I can say this because this was before this happened with my accident. And I'll tell you why. I was speaking full sentences at 18 months. And at 2.5, I told my dad to take my training wheels off my 12-inch bike. He walked me through all the reasons why it wasn't going to be good. And I said, do it anyway. I got on the bike and I rode it. Okay. Now, my legs were too short to touch the ground, so I couldn't stop it. So the only way I could stop it was crashing it. But what am I trying to say is that even back then, my narrative was conditioned and in me to say it didn't hurt. I shut off pain long before I even realized that I was. But when I shut off physical pain because it exceeded my ability to cope, I also shut off mental pain, emotional pain, and spiritual pain for 20 to 25 years and didn't realize it. How the hell am I ever going to discover and get back to the core of who I really am if I can't even understand the pain that I've experienced in those 4 categories, right? And I have to be able to look at it not through a badge of honor like I'm a practitioner of pain. Rather, in fact, I'm not and don't identify as a fighter anymore, though I felt the need to fight for everything, attention, my voice to be heard, to validate myself in every category. No, I live and exist in a place of surrender and loving first, because that is who I am.
Very profound. And you've got quite a bit of quite a following that you do your coaching with. You've got your own podcast, you've got your retreats. Would you say that you have your coaching and what you put out there has a theme to it? Is it self-identity? Is it authenticity? Is that something that you generally find resonates with most people that you work with?
Yeah, but I would tell you that I take it a little bit broader. Utilizing the language that we have today, we really do focus heavily on this concept of take out your trash and what we call the waste to wealth methodology, right? The waste to wealth methodology are 5 pillars guaranteed for any individual or organization to identify and remove the waste they don't even know exists within. Okay, so whether that's systems and processes or it's shame tied to your brother and your dad from when you were 14, the reality of it is they both derail your life just as quickly. And so for me, it's about helping people step into, find, and know that they are within truth and living based on who they are within their power and potential. So yes, you could say it's authenticity. You could say that it's about showing people what's possible with no limits. But at the end of the day, I think what I'm trying to do is to normalize the conversations that need to be had, because I do believe that as humanity, we actually all seek, desire, and want the same things. But it's this external world and politics and all this fear and control that causes this divisive behavior, which disconnects us from ourselves. So what am I trying to do? I'm trying to help people understand how to communicate and how to connect at a deeper level with themselves first, so they can do it with others secondarily. And that happens sometimes in business. Sometimes that happens in personal relationships. I work with a ton of entrepreneurs, and I work a lot in the corporate space with teams. I do a lot in the transformational type space. However, we also have communities that there are no necessarily topics off limit. And we'll talk about marriage issues and kid issues and war issues from people who've been in it, because guess what? The emotions are what we all share. The experience on what gets us into that emotional state is the only difference, but we can all learn from each other in that way. So to me, it's about how do we transform our waste into wealth? Because our greatest gifts, our greatest treasure are often formed and created and sit behind a lot of our trash pressure. So if we know this about everybody, to me, it's about just being fucking better humans.
I love it. I love it. And what I don't love is, especially right now when you turn on the TV and all you see seems to be that there's just this polarity between left and right, and no one seems to be wanting to listen to the other side. It seems like everyone has their mind made up about how the world is, and there's no opening or space for people to come together to be able to just share their differences and to be seen and heard for who they are. And I think the problem with America, and I think each country has its own type of messaging that gets perpetuated in our own echo chambers. And it seems like the messaging here in America is that you're not safe. And then it puts us into a place of, well, how can I protect myself and my own? What do I need to do to take care of myself? And when I go to other countries and I see, there's just not, like, I was just in Ireland a few weeks ago, and you can go to the bar or the pub and everyone has, 40 different opinions about different things. But at the end of the day, everyone like tips their cap to each other. And there's not this like contention of literally people going to blows if you look at someone the wrong way, or whipping out a gun and blowing their face off. I mean, this country, I believe, is way better than this. What I get frustrated with is the leadership in this country. I feel they're not leveling up the conversation to a place where it could be for us to be able to rise up and realize that we are safe and that we are protected, and we are living in one of the most safest times in world history. And yet we walk outside of our doors thinking that, and don't get me wrong, I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff that is happening in the world, but I think it keeps perpetuating based on this regurgitation of we are not safe.
You're spot on. And I mean, here's the thing too, like look at it as a direct correlation of the nervous system, because the nervous system is literally there to anticipate risk or threat. Okay. So the need to protect, defend, right, ourselves. which is hardwired into our nervous system, right? But 100 years ago, you could cut your leg, you could die. That's not the current reality for most of us in this country, right? Now, I want to be really clear. There are social determinants of health. There are major disparities in wealth. There are areas that are very rough. But I also think it's fascinating because I have walked and been in some of the roughest, most dangerous places considered in this country. I sat in the ER by myself last summer in one of the top ER trauma hospitals for number of gunshot wound victims they see every year. Okay? I'm trying to highlight all this. And here's the reality. I wasn't afraid, which also meant nobody in my situation was afraid because I interacted with humanity, because I wasn't concerned that because people looked different than me, talked different than me, had different economic ability than me, had different mental and emotional capacity to me. They were all in the ER for one reason or not, most of which because it was their primary health care. And I was a standout like a sore thumb. But here's the truth. I was told, don't ever walk on the boardwalk in Venice Beach. It's so dangerous. You're going to get shot and killed. I just did it in March multiple times. And it's not scary, right? The thing is if we actually look at so much of what people are reacting to, it's these narratives and fabricated things that are not real, right? And in our country, for the most part, most everybody, and again, I'm saying this with a major caveat, it's not true everywhere. Right? But often the things that create the violence, that actually create the lack of safety, come behind armor because of people's fear.
Yes,
and
exactly.
So if we know that that's the root source, then why are we not spending more time elevating people from a position of fear to understanding? Yes. Why are we not shifting these unconscious biases and naivete into a place of knowledge, understanding, and wisdom? Right? Why are we not, as leaders, asking better questions and expecting more of ourselves and everyone around us, up to and including the leadership? Because again, fighting doesn't accomplish it. Fighting forces aside. Fighting forces aside, because you have to exist in white or you have to exist in black. And I don't mean that in any tie to skin color. I mean that in just contrast. But here's what the truth is. The gift is almost always in the gray area, very rarely in the poles. And so if that is the case, then how do we as individuals become the protectors and connectors and elevate the possibility of connection and conversation? Why am I considered somebody that doesn't have difficult conversations? Because I can be in the most extreme of situations and diffuse it to a place of neutrality. And I can literally interact with almost anybody on almost any topic and not have it turn into a fight. In fact, I can lead it to civil discourse because guess what? I don't have any armor that I'm aware of at this point in my life because I don't have anything to justify, protect, or defend about me. Again, the fear is rooted in fabricated realities, and the fear is often tied to your question before. It feels like a personal attack. So if my wife's language was received in the way that it was, and I'm carrying that level of armor, how could I ever properly expect that I'm hearing the outside world neutrally and accurately for what it is to establish and stand on my own opinion and belief? If I couldn't even do it with my wife, how am I going to do it with anybody else? Right? And look at this perpetuated across our society. It's a major level of disconnection. And again, it's fear and anger driving almost all of it. Yeah.
So big question here, Brian. Have you ever thought about running for president?
No. I've been told.
What would you do? Because I think you'd make a great president. You'd be like, all right, cut all this bullshit. This is not real. Let's get authentic and let's just come together and have some discourse.
Yeah. I'd figure out how to love and connect with people and be objective and non-judgmental to meet them where they are and try to figure out what are the real problems and what are the commonalities that we share within those problems. Because when we can connect on commonalities versus differences, it's amazing how we can come together. But no, I have no desire to be in politics because I don't enjoy the game of politics. And though I can be as competitive and undermining and manipulative as anybody because of my abilities and skill sets, that's not how I choose to live in the world. And I feel like in the space that we're in today, I would not be successful because the environment doesn't allow for space for authenticity. It's just, these folks have to evolve to a place to play the game or they don't get reelected. Or again, it's all of these built-in issues within our system. So for me, it's funny. My wife and I were talking about it because I've had so many people ask me that question or tell me, they're like, when are you going to run for office? When are you going to be? I was like, never. Right. But here's what I am going to do. I'm going to align with as many high-level, elevated leaders throughout this world, and I work with many of them today, none of which I'm going to name because my job relies on confidentiality. But what I also know is that there are things that I see even in our highest of high leaders that demonstrate and show me the heart and humanity that they exist with, even though their actions communicate something different. So if I can see that and I can recognize both that where they're hurting and where they're protecting themselves and what their real intent is behind it, then I can facilitate better communication and better connection by helping them see themselves more clearly. So where will I have an impact in politics? It's going to be through the influence I have in the leaders that exist in our country and world, because I know that I can also help them level up, even though they may not believe they need the help.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Amen. What would you say is your definition of what it means to be a successful human being?
Living and existing in congruence and having joy, freedom, and fulfillment flowing through our lives, and love always.
Beautiful. Wow. I love it.
I've thought about that one. I'm very clear on who I am and what I believe, bro.
That's great. That's awesome. And who would you say has been profoundly influential in your growth and development? That and what piece of advice or counsel have they given to you that you could share with us?
So I have to acknowledge my wife for the role and the impact that she's played in my life. I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for her being able to see who I was through all my armor. Who I am today is who she's always believed me to be, but for 18 years, 14 of it, we hid from each other unconsciously, and she's only felt emotionally safe with me for about 3 years. It's not a coincidence that that's there, but what I also recognize, and I have to acknowledge her as this person, but I don't know that I have a quote from my wife because everything she says is brilliant. One thing that I would like to highlight, and this is where I'll say probably one of the more profound lessons that I learned was from my dad. And it came down to a very simple premise. No matter what, always guaranteed in life, you will always have a minimum of 2 choices. They both might be shitty choices, right? You could be held up at gunpoint and you have to choose between getting shot or handing over your worldly possessions. But the point is, the second you can put yourself into a position of ownership and recognize that it is your choice, and we always have a choice, even if they both are shitty. I've yet to find a situation where that isn't true. And so this is where I've taken that and allowed it to become my own in a combined message. I believe that we can choose the change we want, or we can choose to change when we don't want change.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. I do believe that once we do take full ownership and responsibility for everything in our life, and I'm not going to name names here, but every time I turn on the TV and I see someone who's running for office, blame and talk about how he's a victim of everything else out there. Just the messaging that it's just completely backwards. The only way you can really change and transform anything is if you take full responsibility for not only yourself, but everyone in your life, everything that happens to you, and just ask these strong questions. And even like when I was going through my cancer journey, I had someone ask me, "Why did you choose that, Colin?" And I was like, "What?" And I got defensive about it. And it was kind of like, I didn't choose this. What are you talking? And it really, what I really liked about what you said in terms of what are you justifying, protecting, or defending? And is that the authentic part of who you are that is trying to justify, protect, or defend? And I started to really ask myself and really examine that question. Why did I choose cancer? And it was really profound, because it was like just playing in that space of curiosity. And I think this is the thing that a lot of people are not willing to do, is just to even just try it on. You don't have to believe it, that it's true, or that it is something that, that when people tell you something that you don't like, just for a second, try it on. Just imagine for a second, maybe an opposite world, that it were true. There's a lot of answers on the other side of that I think we just take the time to be curious about what if it were true, that a lot of the times we don't even take the time to try to explore. And that's something that has really opened up my eyes to, well, is this my ego defending, protecting, or justifying, or is this the real authentic part of who I am? And if it is, maybe there is something that I can do about it now that I've taken full ownership of it. So I think it's really fun.
I love everything you just said, and it's really beautiful. And I have to give a caveat before I say this, because I rarely talk anything specific with politics or say anything about a public figure. Okay. But as you were describing this one public figure running for office, which will remain nameless for the time being, but I'm sure everybody will connect to whatever dots they want. I find it fascinating, the irony between the victimhood and the perpetuation of the image of strength.
Yes.
And I really like the whole dynamic as you were talking about that. I hadn't thought about it in the way that you described it, but as you're talking about this, I'm like, that's the first thing that popped in my head. I'm like, yeah, that's actually really interesting. It is victimhood, and there is no ownership and responsibility. Yet this is this pillar of strength and fighting that's existing in the country. And I'm like, what? Like,
yeah.
And again, I look for, and I see lack of congruence across the board with many people, regardless of their political stance, regardless of their religious beliefs, regardless of all these things. And again, all I'm suggesting is the greatest amount of resistance that exists in our world is a lack of alignment between intellectual and emotional beliefs of self and our intent and our actions and how they're delivered and received in the world. And so if I see those as the two biggest gaps, then all I'm going to do is try to speak truth into as many situations as I can, in hopes that others will have the courage and desire to stand in it.
Well, I think you should keep putting your truth out there, Brian, because it's amazing. It's inspiring. It's been great to chat with you. And I feel like we could continue on this conversation for a few more hours, but we're approaching the time of the show where I've got to ask you 6 important questions about what your favorite movies are. Are you ready?
Awesome. Yeah, I'm actually really happy I looked and saw these questions early, because I'm typically like not good with recall on these things. And I looked earlier and I called my wife and I was like, so here we go. Let's go. I got it.
All right. Awesome. So what is your first question what is your favorite movie of all time?
Gladiator.
That's mine.
Are you serious, bro?
Yes,
Did we just become best friends? Did we just become best friends?
Did we just become best friends? Yes.
Bunk beds, bro. Bunk beds. Yes. Room for more activities.
Awesome. What was your favorite movie growing up as a kid?
It is a close tie between The Mighty Ducks and The Sandlot.
Sandlot is a great movie. I don't even think I've seen The Mighty Ducks.
No, you haven't?
No, I haven't seen it. No.
What stands out to me is the difference between making a goal and not is just a quarter of an inch, right? A quarter of an inch either direction either means making it or missing it completely, not hitting the post. That one stood out to me. I was like, oh, that's right. That's good.
I like that. I like that. All right. First, you take the mallow. Smalls, you're killing me. You're killing me, Smalls. If you want to learn how to make a s'more, just watch the Sandlot. Great. Okay, what is your favorite romantic comedy or romance movie?
Oh, you skipped a question on me, bro. I was prepared for a different one. Oh man, I'm gonna mix up the order. Okay, it's The Long Shot, bro. It's The Long Shot with Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron.
You know what? I haven't even seen that.
It's not even that old of a movie, but I love Seth Rogen, and they did such a brilliant job with that movie.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Awesome. Going to be putting that one on my list. And what is your favorite comedy?
The Hangover.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Who's your favorite character in it?
Oh, in The Hangover?
Yeah.
Easily Bradley Cooper. Hands down, no question. I love the character he plays on so many levels. But he's such a core part of all the other characters too, which is why I think he's my favorite. Yeah, no, definitely awesome movie. And who's your favorite actor or male character in a movie? Vince Vaughn. Yeah, I was like a hardcore diehard fan for like everything he made in that decade. He was really big. Awesome. He's got a new series, I think, that just came out. I just saw that on Apple TV. I gotta go check it out, because I love just the speed at which he communicates and processes information as a character, and no matter what his role was, is something I always identified with, because I always would like hear what he was saying going through my own brain. He's amazing. And I just read an article about him a couple of weeks ago where he was saying
someone asked him why he just hasn't worked as much as he used to. And he said nowadays the studios and just, the media companies, they're so micromanagerial about what content is put out there. And they're so careful about, just making sure that whatever they do will make money. And obviously that's always been a part of show business, but it gets to the point, he said, where when I have a joke and I'm trying to tell the joke and I have a studio executive trying to tell me how to tell my jokes, he said, then we've got a problem. And so that's why he's just been, unfortunately, that's just the state of Hollywood these days. Where
does he have a podcast?
I don't know.
I feel like somebody needs to give him a nudge into realizing he can have a lot more authority if he just creates his own stuff.
That's true. That's true.
Maybe we need to call Vince and propose a 3-way show and just have some fun and talk shit all day. That'd be great. That'd be a blast.
I think that'd be great. And who's your favorite actress or female character?
Captain Marvel.
Oh, Brie Larson.
Yeah. But it's the character more than anything. But yes, the actress who played her crushed it.
And so what did you like about Captain Marvel?
Man, I'm a father of a daughter. And I love that a singular female, through deep transformation, had the ability to become arguably the most powerful being in the entire universe and could thwart all of this other technology just because of who she was. And so, like, I see so much of the vigor and the conviction and the passion and advocacy in her and her character that I see in both my wife and my daughter. And so for me, it just connects it all because it shows little girls and women what's possible in superhero form. But at the end of the day, we all have superheroes in our normal lives. So that was one of the reasons I identified with her.
Awesome. That's inspiring. Well, Brian, I appreciate your time. And it's been great to get to know you a little bit better. And I would love to have the chance to, we live just down the street from each other. So we got to grab a coffee.
I'm going to have you over to my home studio and we're going to record a podcast on my show. I can tell you that already because it's going to be awesome. But yes, we're also going to go get coffee, lunch, whatever, and hang out because I can't wait to explore.
Awesome. And for those of you out there who want to just explore a little bit more about Brian, Brian does coaching and he has, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about what you offer for anyone out there who might be interested.
Yeah, so I'll rattle it up at a high level. I do one-to-one coaching in a whole variety of different ways. We've got a mastermind that we run for service-based entrepreneurs and really helping them maximize and step into their power, potential, and monetization. I'm a big believer in the communication element as well, deeply ingrained. I do a lot of corporate work. I'm a keynote speaker. We have digital products. But the piece I'll offer to everybody today, if you, right there, that exact link that you just did it for the rapid fire coaching community, this is one of the things that we did because we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as we can by reducing the level of suffering. But what I realized early in my trajectory is most people couldn't afford me. This was created to have zero or very low barrier of entry from a financial perspective for people to get the help they need. So there's 30 days free, which is 3 Zoom sessions that I do hot seat coaching within the room, and you can come get your questions answered, even if you never sign up financially. If you sign up financially after that, it's $88 a month in perpetuity and you're grandfathered in because we won't be changing that price. This is a place that is not only a playground, but the community that's been developed has created such congruence, such connection, and there's transference and transformation through each individual who shows up and participates. And so everyone is welcome. There really are no parameters or barriers other than I have a no asshole policy, and people are required to sign NDAs for the confidentiality to remain in the group.
Okay. Awesome. Well, everyone out there, obviously you've seen what Brian is all about, and I definitely encourage you guys to check out his rapid fire community coaching and just reach out to him in general. And Brian, appreciate you being here again. And lastly, the last question I like to ask my guests before we tune off here is, what is the thing that inspires you most?
I would have to say that it's the double-edged sword of possibility and opportunity and unlived potential. I love to be able to live and experience what's possible, and I love to pull out unlived potential in others to show them what's possible within themselves. And so for me, that keeps me going every single day because there's curiosity and wonder tied to it. And there truly are miracles that happen when we open ourselves to possibility.
Awesome. Love it. It's very in alignment with what I believe and what I talk about as well. So I think we are new best friends.
Yes, I can't wait to get bunk beds. Let's go.
Yes. Great to meet you, Bri. Thanks for being here.
You as well, bro. Thanks for building a platform for me to help get some good into the world, my friend. You're awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Take care. All right. There we go. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. And again, thanks, Brian, for imparting your knowledge, your wisdom, your insight. What a great conversation. So much information. Definitely going to have to go back and watch this one because we definitely covered a lot. And Brian speaks very quickly, and he was able to cram so much wisdom and insight into this hour that, again, I'm definitely going to have to go back and rewatch this one. But by all means, please share this episode with whoever you think might benefit from it. And for those of you out there who are looking for, again, some community, whether that's in Brian's group or in my Patreon group, we've got, with my Patreon group, we do 3 different meetings a month, where the first one is Hour of Empower. And it's your opportunity to come in and get accountable for whatever it is that you want to accomplish and be supported for that month. Then the next week after that, we do this the first Tuesday of the month is Hour of Empower. The second Tuesday of every month is our meditation and visualization session. A big part of what I contribute my success to in my acting career is the power of visualization and meditation. We've got to take the time, as Brian mentioned at the early onset of the episode today, that we got to take the time to pause, to just be able to check in with ourselves and really get real with ourselves. And in this hour of meditation and visualization, I have you go through some writing exercises and help you get really connected to what it is that is the authentic part of yourself. And then we do some quantum jumping into the future about what it is that you want to create and what it looks like from a visual standpoint. And then the third Tuesday of the month, we do our relationship class where we watch a movie and then we talk about how that movie relates to where we are at in our own relationships in life. So definitely Brian's recommendation for The Long Shot, I think, is going to be our next movie for this month. So if you want to check out some great community, would love to have you in our Patreon community. And then also, as I mentioned early on in the podcast tonight, I'm starting to, we're doing a slow little rollout of my next big thing, and that is my Beyond Impact Communications Masterclass. And this is going to be rolled out with 5 free days in my Beyond Impact 5-day expo. It's a communication expo. Every day is going to be something different. The first day is all about your mission and your message. Second day is all about purpose and how your communication and your messaging is connected to your deeper purpose. Third day is all about your story. And I'm going to talk about the hero's journey. And if you are needing some support and some essentially a roadmap for you to be able to start writing out what it looks like for you to be able to get up in front of an audience or to do podcasts, or if you're looking to just promote who you are, your personal brand or your business, a lot of the times the best way to do that is through story. So we're going to be talking about how to connect your story to this hero's journey because people really resonate with story. Fourth day is all about your audience and who you are talking to and what their story is and what they need and how you can solve whatever problems that they are dealing with. Because when you become the answer to someone's problem, you become highly valuable. And then that's when you can name your price. So you can start trading your value for what you get paid for instead of trading hours for dollars. And then the last day is all about inviting you to my Beyond Impact Communications Masterclass. And I'm going to tell you all about all of this in my 5 free days. So we are going to be rolling out how to register for this very soon. The expo is going to be in 3 weeks. So you got plenty of time to explore what this looks like. I'm going to be sharing with you more about what the expo is all about. And in the meantime, maybe I can jump onto Brian's podcast, talk a little bit more about that with him. But just want to say thank you all for, again, being loyal followers of Coffee with Colin. This is the last episode. It was an honor to have Brian on as my last guest on Coffee with Colin for season 6. And when we come back, we're going to be launching a revamped, more focused version of the show. And it is going to be something that I'm incredibly proud of and can't wait to launch it and share it with you. Also, I just had my last movie come out. It's called Duchess. We had the premiere in Los Angeles last week. If you want to check it out, it's on all platforms, Apple, Amazon, you name it. We'd love for you to check that out. Let me know what you think of it. And yeah, just want to support you in whatever it is that you are looking to create more of in your life. And that's why I'm here. So look forward to seeing you guys one way or another on my next platform, and wish you guys my best on this Motivation Monday. Take care for now.